The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose has fascinated people for over 100 years. From stories of spirits and the occult, seances, and a psychic telling Sarah Winchester that she should be building the house to make up for all the deaths from the Winchester rifles. But what if I were to tell you that was just a very well-fabricated lie based on rumors and speculations? In this video, we're going to be discussing the real truth behind the Winchester house. We're going to start today first with discussing the paranormal story that we're told about the Winchester house. And then I'm going to be actually telling you the truth and the real history of how it came to be. So sit back and get comfortable as we delve into the mystery of the Winchester house. Before we delve into the history of Sarah Winchester and the Winchester house, let me just paint a picture for you of what the house currently looks like today, because besides the paranormal stories, this architecture marvel interests people for the odd way that it stands today. What stands today as the Winchester Mystery House is a 4-story, 160-room, 24,000 square foot mansion, constructed mostly of redwood, and it sits on 5 acres of land. The home has 10,000 windows. Some of them don't even open to the outside. 2,000 doors, some of them just opening to blank walls or to a complete drop. There's 47 fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 40 stairways, 40 bedrooms, 2 ballrooms, 13 bathrooms, 3 elevators, 6 kitchens, 2 basements, and a Venetian-inspired dining room. The house is decorated in furniture and pieces from that period, but her personal belongings were actually left to her niece, Marion Marriott, who kept what she wanted and then sold off the remainder at an auction. Sarah Sally Lockwood Winchester was born on March 7th, 1839. Sarah was born to parents Leonard and Sarah Hardy in New Haven, Connecticut. Though she was formerly called Sarah, she was nicknamed after her grandmother, Sally. Sarah had 4 sisters and 1 brother who survived to adulthood. Sarah Winchester's father was actually quite a skilled craftsman, and he had a mill and a wood shop as well. He also did a lot of architecture work and built some homes and things of that nature. In 1862, when Sarah was 14 years old, she was married to William Wirt Winchester, who was the heir of the Winchester fortune. And this is from the Winchester Repeating Arms from back in the day. Before the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, William's father was actually a wealthy shirt manufacturer as well. So he had a thriving business before he got into the business of the Winchester Repeating Arms. William and Sarah actually were childhood friends growing up. They were neighbors. After the war in 1866, they began construction on their own home, and in June of 1866, Sarah Winchester gave birth to a baby girl named Annie. But unfortunately, the happy couple would soon become devastated as her baby died of marasmus within a month of her birth. Marasmus is a malnutrition. The couple were quite devastated, and they sort of withdrew from society after that point, and Sarah remained secluded for a year, grieving her daughter. However, this whole time, construction on their home was happening, and Sarah was really embracing it, and she got very much into architecture. It seemed like it was a way that she was coping with the death that she just experienced from her daughter. When the house was completed, it was approximately 20,000 square feet, had over 20 rooms. There were marble floors, fancy fireplaces and chandeliers, large bay windows as well, and a circular drive out in front of the home. A year later, Sarah's father, in 1869, died of, they think, rheumatoid arthritis, and Sarah would soon find herself dealing with loss yet again. In May of 1880, Sarah lost her mother, and shortly after, her father-in-law, and in 1881, Sarah lost her husband to tuberculosis. After all the loss that she experienced, she ended up spending a bit of time at the coast, and then eventually she made a big trip to Europe. Being the only surviving heir or heiress to the Winchester fortune, she had quite a lot of money at her disposal now, and she found herself experiencing as well rheumatoid arthritis. So her doctor suggested that she move to a warmer climate, which is why she settled in California. Sarah also paid for all of her remaining family, her sisters and their husbands and their families, to come move with her as well. And that's sort of what started the building of this home. The Winchester Mystery House was originally called the Londa Villa, and she purchased it in 1886. Now, the story goes that Sarah was so devastated from all the loss that she experienced in her life that she went to see a psychic, because at this time, this was the time of the spiritualist movement, which if you've watched one of my past paranormal history videos, I did one on seances and the spiritualism movement. I talk a lot about this sort of movement in this time period as well in that video, and you can see it in the playlist, which is linked to this video as well. So it was quite popular back then to go visit psychics and to try to go get answers from the other side. So the story is that Sarah went to go see a psychic, and then that psychic told her that there's a curse on her, and it's a curse on the Winchester name because of all the deaths that have resulted from the repeating rifles. And the story goes that the psychic told her that she needs to build a house that is confusing for the spirits, to sort of trap them there so that they're constantly moving and constantly stuck inside this home so that they won't be able to hurt any more of Sarah's family. Now, that is the story that was created, but there's no proof of this, and there's quite a number of stories that were created. There's also stories that Sarah would do private seances in a closet, and she would try to contact her husband and deceased family members and everything as well. There's also stories that Sarah as well denied a visit from the president. There was lots of stories about Sarah, and that kind of fed into eventually becoming more of a paranormal side of things. But family members, workers, things of that nature came out after her death, refuting it, saying that this wasn't true. But why did everyone pretty much ignore them? Well, the house turned into a bit of a attraction, and people were making money off of it. And that's what's kept the house so popular to this day. Now, could Sarah be haunting her own house? Well, it's very possible. A ghost often will haunt the house that they died in, or a house that they loved, or a place that they loved being in after death. So some people say that they've seen Sarah, and that could make sense. I could see that. But the paranormal story of this house and Sarah is quite simple, right? So I just wanted to introduce that as for anyone who isn't aware of what the story is, because what we're going to really get into in this video is we're going to get into listing off all the myths, and then I'm going to tell you the truth behind each myth. So I'm going to be debunking the majority of everything that is said about this house and about her. So let's get into the lies and the truths about Sarah Winchester and the Winchester Mystery House. So the thing about Sarah, you have to realize she was living in like a high society kind of level with her money and her wealth. And after experiencing all the death and everything that she experienced in her life, she just kind of hit a realization that all of this frivolous material stuff doesn't matter. In high society at the time, you were required to act a certain way. You were required to go to functions, and if you weren't there, people would talk about you, and there's just rumors. And honestly, she just got tired of it. I think she leaned into being eccentric so people would leave her alone. She just wanted to build, and she was enjoying being an amateur architect. That became her passion after all the hardship in her life, and she just wanted to be left alone to do that. She didn't want to go back to that group of stuffy people, which, I can't blame her, can you? So, while she was alive, a lot of these rumors started up and a lot of these stories were created, and these are a lot of the ones that we hear about. And she didn't bother to refute them because she didn't care. She didn't want to be part of that society. And she didn't want anyone to go to bat for her to refute them either, because she just wanted to accept that, because the more eccentric she was, the more people would just leave her alone and leave her be. She was very intelligent and very calculated in her decisions and how she presented herself to society. And then additionally, her father was a bit of an architect, and he also he was a woodworker as well. So she was always interested in this from a young age. So she just sort of embraced this. This gave her joy. After all of the pain and suffering she had been through, she just wanted joy. And this is what gave her joy. So that's a bit of the background of her and how I personally think that she just let things be because she didn't want to be part of that society. And I can completely understand that. On like personal story, I came from nothing, grew up quite poor. And then I got introduced to sort of like upper class / rich people. And it's a different kind of world and it's unpleasant like to be around a lot of them. So I completely understand why she just wanted to be done with it. You have a different perspective on life when you're surrounded by death all the time. All right, I'm going to try to go through a list of the most popular stories that are told about her, and then I'm going to explain the real story behind each of them. So from the beginning, this whole story started with Sarah visiting a psychic, a medium who told her that she had to build a house, essentially like a maze, to keep the ghost appeased so that they would stop hurting people. The reality is, nobody can corroborate that she ever saw a medium, like ever. No one ever has said that, yes, she did see one. Her workers, her servants, her family have even come out and said, no, she wasn't doing any of that sort of stuff. But people didn't listen. So this story of her visiting the psychic is just most likely false. No historian has been able to corroborate it. And again, as I said a couple of times already, the only reason she really started building this house up is, well, there's two. One, she was inviting her remaining family and their families to come live with her. So she had to build this house bigger so that they could each have like their own wings and they could each have their own part of the home and they weren't like living on top of each other. She wanted her family to come live with her. That's what started it. And then two, her love of architecture. When she started designing stuff, she just kind of fell in love with it and wanted to keep going. And the funny thing is, this wasn't the only house that she built. After the earthquake, which we'll get into shortly as well, she started building a house somewhere else and she was doing the same thing. She was, very much into architecture and she was designing another house. There even was a paper trail of her subscribing to journals and magazines on architecture and building. So that is something that can be proven. Okay. The next story about her is people say that construction went on for 38 years and it went on day and night, and she never let any of her workers take a break, and that is false. Sarah was actually a very kind woman and she insisted often for her workers to take breaks. She would even have them take like a month or 2 months off at a time, like especially during holidays, during Christmas, things like that. She very much cared about their health and well-being, and she was not working people to the bone. So that is another rumor that was just told about her, and it just kind of took off as well. All right, the next rumor. The house as it stands today is weird. It looks weird. There's doors that open to nowhere. There's, staircases that make no sense. The house is built like a fun house, like a maze in a fun house. The story that was created is that she did that on purpose to confuse the spirits. But in actuality, the truth is there was an earthquake in 1906 and it devastated the house. The 1906 earthquake was a 7.8 on the Richter scale. It was 16 times more powerful than an earthquake that happened in 1868. That was 7.0 on the Richter scale. So just imagine the amount of damage that was done. And the whole area was severely damaged. It did something like, I think it took out like half of the house. Like the house stands at 4 stories. It was actually 7 stories. And that earthquake took out wings. It took out floors. It destroyed a lot of the house. She put in so many years and so much time into that house. And she at this point had already started working on another home as well. After all the damage that was done to this house, honestly, Sarah, her heart was a little bit broken. She didn't want to tear it down, but she didn't want to restore it to what it was. All the years and work that she put into it, she just wanted to walk away from it. But, she wanted to make sure that it was safe. So she told them to do what was necessary to make sure that it was safe, watertight, and so forth. And that's why the house is so strange looking to people that visit it nowadays. Because those doors did go somewhere. Those windows were to something. Like the house actually looked like a normal house. Anything else odd in the house, like for instance, staircases that were built a little bit weird, they were actually built sort of like a ramp-like to help with her rheumatoid arthritis because she was having trouble getting around eventually as she got older. After the earthquake, Sarah actually ended up moving to a houseboat that she had in Burlingame. She did return back to the Winchester house every once in a while, but she was very limited in her movements. At this point, she had rheumatoid arthritis. You have to remember that's a very painful disease. So she couldn't also really get around large buildings as well. So she would come back once in a while, but she kind of just stayed in the West Wing, it said. So after she got older and after the devastating earthquake, she just decided to live in a smaller place, and she would just occasionally come back. Let's discuss another rumor. There was another rumor that Sarah would have seances by herself in a very small room or a closet or something of that nature. This was during the Victorian era, during the spiritualist movement. So it's pretty common for people to have seances, but seances were a social event. It was a get together of people. It was something fun to do together. So no one was doing seances by themselves. Plus Sarah, she wasn't a psychic or anything of that nature, and seances were held by psychics. So this whole her having seances by herself just didn't really make sense. Now, did she ever have a seance with other people? Did she ever do and take part in the spiritualist movement? Possibly. It was quite popular back then, but there's no record that she ever actually attended or did any seances. On top of that, she was eccentric and she was trying to separate herself from the high society. So she may not have been doing it at all because it just wasn't of interest to her. So there's just no proof of any of this. All right, the next thing on the list here is on the website, it talks about Sarah being obsessed with the number 13. The website says that there's like 13 hooks in a seance room, 13 panels of glass, 13 steps, things like that. There's like a list of different 13. In reality, Sarah, she wasn't obsessed with 13. A bunch of the items that the website references were actually added after Sarah's death. They were actually added very recently. And it's just another hook that they're using on the website to get people in. There's other rumors that Sarah apparently spied on her employees and that there's secret doors and secret walkways for her to spy on her employees. Sarah, she didn't have time and she didn't care to spy on her employees. Plus also she had rheumatoid arthritis. She wasn't running around staring at people through the walls. So all of this is just something made up as well. There was no evidence of any of this. Everyone who worked for her loved her and she was very, very kind employer. So she wasn't some high society person who was treating her employees with degradation. Now, another big rumor as well, which, even if it was true, it would actually work for her too. But there's a story that she snubbed a president that came to visit her. Teddy Roosevelt came to visit Sarah's home. It's said that he came to visit her home in 1903, but was turned away at the gates. Now, this was a story that was made up while she was alive, and it was made up by the high society members. In reality, he never went to her house asking to come in. Additionally, Sarah was actually away from her home that year. She was actually working on the wedding for her niece, so she wasn't even home during this time. But this was a rumor made up by the high society members, just to kind of talk more about how eccentric she was. And she just let these things go because she kind of just didn't want to be part of that society anyway. So she never actually corrected anyone. Okay, so what happened after her death? How did this house turn into this? How did it turn into this big attraction? After she died, rumors and stories just only grew and things got more outlandish, the stories. Even though there were still staff members and family members who were still alive that were refuting the stuff, no one was really listening to them. So the home was eventually sold off to a private investor. There's no information about who the person is who bought it, but that private investor who owned it leased the home to John and Mamie Brown. The Brown family were longtime carnival workers. They rented the house and then turned it into a public tour and an attraction. Mamie Brown was the first tour guide in the house, and they really built up the stories and kind of let things get a little bit more outlandish over time because it would sell tickets. They didn't necessarily start all the rumors. All the rumors were already kind of there, but they built upon them and kind of let them go a little bit more out of control. They embellished the stories and they did make up some new ones here and there. They also did, for instance, the number 13. That was a story that was made up after her death. So probably by the Brown family. And there were 13s, items added throughout the house. So things were in 13s. And that stuff was added after Sarah's death as well. So there is stuff that they did to make the house more of a tourist attraction. Additionally, the seance room, that was actually never a thing when she was alive. There was no rumor of that. That was something that became a rumor around 1928 in an article that was published. So again, that was something that was added to give more allure to the house that was a tourist attraction. Eventually, John and Mamie Brown did purchase the home as well. And currently, people say that no one knows exactly who owns the home, but it's owned by Winchester Investments LLC. It is privately owned. It's not a publicly owned home. Now, what about ghosts? What about the hauntings that take place there? Well, this is all just really conjecture and stories of people who have visited. Could Sarah be haunting her old room? That's a common thing. You go there and you'll smell her perfume, or things will happen within her bedroom, and people have a lot of experiences there. If there are spirits, if there are ghosts, it's very possible that she is haunting it. It's very possible it could be a residual haunting as well, and you're just picking up on something from the past too. These are things that we don't really have definitive answers for in the paranormal community. We're really just kind of still developing things and trying to figure out the answers. And that is what we do, right? We try to seek out answers. Now, would I still go to the house? Yeah, of course. I would go check it out. It's a big part of history. It's a paranormal attraction as well. I think, everyone would love to say that they've at least been to the Winchester house one time. It is an interesting place. And, when I go, I'm going to go realizing like a lot of these staircases and doors to nowhere are because of the damage from the earthquake. And that is the true story of why it's sort of built weirdly the way it is. This video this week is a shorter one because honestly, it's really just cut and dry, Stories were made up. Sarah didn't want to be part of high society. She let stories run and she didn't care to actually correct anyone. And then they kind of just grew from there and got turned into an attraction after a carnival couple took over the home. So things are pretty cut and dry on this one. There isn't really a whole lot more to add right now. If there's anything else that comes up that's interesting, maybe I'll make another video on the Winchester house. But for now, it's pretty simple. Winchester house, honestly, pretty debunked. Is she maybe haunting her room? Maybe that's the only real ghost paranormal thing I would agree that might be there. If anything, I personally think it's just a residual haunting. I don't think she's actually there. I really don't. And she was so upset after her house was destroyed. I really don't think that her ghost would go stay there for the rest of her afterlife. It just seems not something that she would do. But tell me, what do you think? Leave a comment below and let me know. Have you been to the house? Have you had any experiences there? I would love to hear any experiences and anything that you've been through at the house. And if there's anything of interest that I didn't cover in this video, put it in the comments below and, let everyone know. If you would like to learn more about the Victorian era and the spiritualist movement, I have a very detailed video and I will link it up here for you guys as well. Go check that out. If you've enjoyed today's video though, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and helps me make more videos for you guys to watch. This is me signing off. Enjoy the rest of your night.